the recording. And see Oliver right here, all the people are coming in. So let me see.
Your deck isn't showing yet.
Yeah, I'm gonna get it. I'm going. Let's see. Bummer. Let me bring it over here real quick. We're gonna do. Where is it? Oh, slideshow from beginning. Display settings. Whoops, wrong one. Displays. Beginning. Why is it not doing that? Oh, bummer. Let's try it again. Oh, it's not doing it. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start. Okay, here we go.
All right.
Hi, my name is Rob Canzaneri, and I'm the chairman of the PaaS Data Architecture chapter. And I want to really welcome everyone for coming today. I have a special guest today is Oliver from Microsoft, and he's going to give a great presentation on data warehousing. But at first, I'd like to talk a little bit about PaaS, and we have some slides here. This here today is the part of the SQL Server 2014 webinar series. And all the chapters are going to be hosting some webinars, and we're really glad to have this opportunity to be with Microsoft and see these presentations. Let's see if this works. A little bit about PaaS. It's a great organization. Membership is free. I really encourage everyone to visit SQLPaaS.org and register to get involved. All right, so let's go to the next screen. PaaS is going to have a conference coming up. It's the Business Analytics Conference, and I have a discount code. I hope everyone can see it. It's right here on the screen, and if you use this discount code, you will get a discount when you sign up. So please use the discount code. I'll go to the next screen. And we are the Data Architect Virtual Chapter. So to go on a little bit more about PaaS is they always have SQL Saturdays all over the United States, maybe all over the world, and they have different chapters. And actually, I'm going to be able to speak at one of the SQL Saturdays coming up in Baton Rouge on August the 2nd. So if you happen to be in Baton Rouge on August the 2nd, please come and see me. I'd love for everyone to pack the house and see my presentation. I'm going to probably be doing the one I like to do on demystifying the transaction log. So I'd like to turn it over at this point to Oliver, who's going to be giving giving his presentation from Microsoft. Oliver, are you there?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, let me get this going. I'm going to change it over to you.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Let me select my screen here. Hold on.
Oh, no. Hold on a second, Oliver. I made a mistake. We're going to have to do it again. I forgot to start the broadcast. Oh, no.
Okay.
I apologize to everyone. No one's seen anything, so we'll start it over. Here we go.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Oliver, can you change it back to me?
Yeah.
I apologize for that. I forgot to hit that button.
So back to you?
Yeah, thank you. I'm here. Here we go. Let's start it over. Oh, wrong one. Wrong one. Sorry. Let's close that out. Oh, man, this is not good. That's the chapter deck. No, that's it. Let's do... Hi, everyone. My name is Rob Canzaneri, and I am the chairman of the PaaS Virtual Chapter for Data Architecture, and I'd like to welcome you here today to see our presentation. I have Oliver with us, and he's going to be giving a webinar on data warehousing. This is in a series of SQL Server webinars that PASS and Microsoft is working together to host. And there are going to be several of them in the future. And I hope you all can view some more with me. PASS is a great organization. Membership is free. If you'd like to learn more about PASS, you can go to sqlpass.org and register and find out a lot about their free. They have a lot of free online training and different events like SQL Saturday. They're going to be hosting a conference. The conference is the Business Analytics, and I have a special discount code, and if you use my discount code right here, BAVC07, you'll get $150 off. Once again, my name is Rob, and I'm, from the Data Architecture chapter. I'm glad everyone is here, and I'm going to actually have a chance to present in my local SQL Saturday on August the 2nd, and if you happen to be in Baton Rouge, I'd love for you to come see me. Thank you. So at this point, I'm going to change it to Oliver. Here we go, Oliver.
All right, let me change the screen. Okay, screen that's monitor 2. And Rob, let me know if you can see the slide deck.
I can see it. One last thing I forgot to mention, if you have any questions, please hold them to the end, and we're going to stop at 1. And if we run out of time, just email them, and I will get them to Oliver. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Rob. And welcome, everyone, wherever you are in the world. Rob tells me, actually, that this chapter has a global presence. So either good afternoon, good morning, or maybe even good evening for some of you guys who are watching this. So my name is Oliver Chu. I am product marketing here in SQL Server for Microsoft. So I sit in Redmond, and today I'm going to present to you guys around the modern data warehouse, or modernizing your data warehouse for big data is kind of the subtitle. So today we will be talking about Microsoft's story around not only data warehousing but also for big data. And I will kind of preface this presentation by saying I am in marketing, so I'm going to give you guys the high-level pitch. And I mentioned to Rob that if you guys want to go more in depth into like a 300-level presentation, I'll be very happy to organize that with some of the engineering team as well. And so let me know, or let Rob know, and we can facilitate that moving forward. But today I was going to give you kind of the overall high-level pitch and high-level summary coming from Microsoft, so that you guys know what's coming down next, and what are the things that you guys should to be kind of on the lookout for of certain either products or features that you could potentially leverage moving forward. Okay, so with that, I wanted to talk to you guys about the traditional data warehouse. And so, so I'm assuming that most of you guys on the call are SQL Server customers. And so you've probably been using SQL Server for a while, or maybe not necessarily, but you're using SQL Server in some sense of the fashion. And SQL Server is a great tool. It's a great solution. You can use it for your transactional database. You can also use it for data warehousing. But there is some challenges to kind of the data warehousing space moving forward that we wanted to address. And we want to address for the purposes of letting you guys know that Microsoft has a solution for these challenges. And so, first of all, I want to cover off the challenges that we already know. So for you guys on the phone, any of you guys who are data warehouse practitioners or DBAs, I'm assuming the majority of you guys are. There's limitations that we might already have. Like, for instance, if you query the warehouse, maybe you wish it would go a little bit faster. For instance, sometimes some reports, if you schedule it, it takes hours. Maybe some are run overnight. Just it really depends on how much data you have, the complexities, the design of the data warehouse, things like that. Right? We know these limitations. There's other limitations as well. Is that if you're starting a data warehouse from scratch, it probably takes a while for you to, gather the requirements from the business and then, architect it, design it, and then, find the right data, deploy it, cleanse it, manage it, all that kind of stuff. So we all kind of know these limitations, and it's been okay. It's been okay for the last 10, 15, 20 years. But there's a shift that's going on in the market. And you're probably starting to hear a lot from not only analysts like Gartner or Forrester or these kind of industry analysts. You're probably also hearing from other vendors, and they're talking about big data or Hadoop or things like that. And you're wondering, well, how does that fit in with my existing data architecture or my existing data warehouse? And so hopefully today we'll be covering enough so that you understand the different technologies that Microsoft has that will complement your existing SQL Server data warehouse. So the first interesting quote here that's been on the screen all this time is, data warehousing has reached the most significant tipping point since its inception. The biggest, possibly most elaborate data management system in IT is changing. This quote is not just the limitations that we all know. This is talking about a major shift in the thing that we use, right? It's not just the existing challenges. It's something major. So what are the things that are causing a data warehouse to have a significant shift? And so from Microsoft's point of view, there's probably 4 key challenges that we see that's impacting the traditional data warehouse. So the first one is around increasing data volume. And by the way, this should not be anything surprisingly to you guys, right? So data volumes are growing, and in fact, in the IT space, this has been a challenge that people have been talking about maybe for the last decade, that data volumes are growing, right? And so from our perspective, we feel that data growth might actually grow 10x over the next 5 years. I mean, it all depends on your organization, obviously, and what you hope to capture. But what we're seeing is that organizations are trying to capture more and more data, different types of data, and all this kind of stuff. So we actually do feel that this is a trajectory that all organizations will face, and it's just a matter of how much more data will you have, or will you be asked to gather and store than previously. And so the question that us as IT folks have to answer is our existing data warehouse / data architecture going to be able to handle this new explosion of data, right? And so, I mean, it really depends on your organization. As I said before, some of us, it'd be okay, right? It's going to be a slow go at it, and we're gonna get data as we get data. But the question could also be, well, how would you be able to handle the data that you might need 5 years down the line? So future-proofing your infrastructure for this more data, right? And so SQL Server, for those of you who don't know, is built on a traditional kind of data warehouse system. It's an SMP, Symmetric Multiprocessing Engine, and it processes data sequentially. And so there are some limitations around that, and we'll talk about that. That being said, SQL Server is a great technology, and I'll cover off what's coming in 2014 for those of you who are interested. And of course, 2014 is going to be made available for you guys really soon, if not already. And so you guys can leverage some of the new technologies in that. So I'll cover off what we're coming down the pipe for SQL Server, as well as some other technologies that you can leverage to be able to handle this increase in data volume. So that's the first thing. The second thing is around real-time data. So as I mentioned just kind of previously in the past slide, sometimes users are no longer willing to wait hours, maybe sometimes even overnight or what have you, for reports. So, they want to see things at web speed. They want to issue a query and they want to get a response back fairly quickly. And so the question is, will your system be able to handle that kind of responsiveness that you need from your end users? And so that's the question on real-time data. The third trend And this really is the major trend driving this meme in the industry called big data, is around new data sources and types. And so you probably have already heard, the terminology Hadoop or big data, and so I'll cover that off in a lot more detail in the subsequent slide. But just to set up a subset of this big data problem is around data types. And so there's an explosion of new and different types of data that that we're calling non-relational. And some vendors and people out there are calling it unstructured or semi-structured. I would argue that there's no data that's actually unstructured, but you get the idea. It's non-relational data that's coming from different types, like devices, or from the web, like clickstream data, or web logs and that kind of stuff. Sensors, and even from social, so things like Twitter or Facebook and so the question is, will your organization be able to handle that? And I know for a lot of you guys, you're probably saying to yourself, well, my organization is not ready for this new type of data. I don't know if I need to capture stuff from Facebook. Like, I don't know, right? I'm on the fence of that, and that's okay. That's okay. The question that we need to ask ourselves is also not only now but also in the future, right? And so you can kind of just explore that now. And this is what I've been telling customers who've been coming up to Microsoft main campus here for EBC and exec briefing. I've been telling them, you might not need to have this now, but it's good to know, A, I guess that Microsoft has something, and B, that you can always explore it now and with the eye on the future, right? And so a lot of organizations are starting in the exploration phase of this, and I'll talk about that more in a subsequent slide. The last thing I'll talk about is this hybrid thing, and of course, you guys as Microsoft customers probably have heard us say cloud quite a bit over the last few years, and so it is a growing trend. I know obviously that not every customer is wanting or needing to go into the cloud at all, but we just wanted to make it clear that we have a comprehensive cloud platform for you to either have an on-premise or cloud, whatever you want, whatever you decide. We will have an infrastructure and a platform for you that's hybrid, right? You can straddle both on-premise and the cloud, or you could just be on-premise, or you could just be in the cloud. We are going to have a strategy across all of this, and not only that, we're going to have a hybrid strategy so that you can have both if you wanted to. And so I'll talk a little bit more about the cloud in a future slide, so I won't belabor the point. The next kind of session, next slide is kind of a build, and so what I wanted to do was to give you guys like a very high-level architecture. This is not a real architecture, right? But it's a high-level architectural view of the modern data warehouse. And it starts off with this ability to handle all scales of data, right? And so, with your SQL Server deployment of data warehousing, it could probably handle anywhere from terabytes of data to tens of terabytes of data, and we've seen customers go all the way up into the maybe 100 terabytes of data in their SQL Server. So that's great. But what we've seen is you need to be able to handle petabytes of data as you start to scale out to much more higher volumes of relational data. You have to be able to handle petabytes data. So how can you kind of evolve your SQL Server deployment to handle that? So we'll cover that off in the next few slides. So that's under the relational side. And then on the non-relational side, as I've been talking about, you kind of have to have a strategy to be able to accommodate non-relational data. So what is Microsoft's story as it relates to Hadoop? And what is Microsoft's Hadoop story? So we'll be covering that off today in this session. Actually, what I'll do is I'll give you a high-level view of the products that Microsoft have right now, and then I'll go into some more high-level marketing stuff. But I do want to highlight the products. So first of all, for you guys who are long-time Microsoft customers and have been playing around with our BI tools, one thing that you guys should probably look at that just recently launched, it's called Power BI for Office 365. and you should definitely take a look at it. It's really, really cool. I especially love the natural language search. So you can actually type in, in your natural language, what's my top 10 sales for, whatever product that you might have in your organization, and it'll come back if you have, the according, Power Pivot model already uploaded. And so it's a really great tool for end users to be able to experience BI in a really compelling way. Today's session is not about Power BI, though, so I won't be covering that today. But if you haven't heard of it, if you haven't seen it, definitely encourage you guys to take a look at that. Okay, and of course you can even download some of that stuff for free on and try a free trial on PowerBI.com if you guys are interested. Okay, so the next layer is what I'm talking about, which is our quote unquote modern data warehouse layer, and that's really powered by four technologies, so to speak. The first one, of course, is SQL Server, and we all know that and love that. And I'll cover off what's new in 2014 in a future slide. And then we have Parallel Data Warehouse. So I've been kind of hinting towards being able to handle more scale. And so I'll talk a little bit more about Parallel Data Warehouse, quite a bit more actually in the future slides. And then we have this Hadoop stuff, and it's really related to our partnership with Hortonworks that allows us to have a comprehensive strategy here. So the main thing I wanted to highlight with you guys is this on this slide, which is Microsoft has a solution for data warehousing that spans software, appliance, and cloud. So whether or not you want to deploy yourself, if you are a long-time SQL Server DBA, you already know how to optimize the data warehouse, you have a certain scale limit, and you're okay with that, that's your software deployment, right? But if you want to pre-build, scale out MPP data warehouse appliance that can scale to massive amounts, which I'll cover off in a second, we have PDW. And in the cloud, we can also host a SQL Server for data warehousing in Azure. So we have kind of the breadth play for software appliance cloud. As it relates to Hadoop, we also have offerings in software appliance cloud. And I'll talk about Hadoop a lot more in a future slide, so I won't belabor the point. I'll just keep moving just so that we will cover off and we'll finish on time, and maybe we will have some time for questions. Hopefully, we'll see. This is how fast I talk. So, so this is the three pillars as it relates to the modern data warehouse. And of course, I'm a marketing guy, so I have to boil it down to three pillars, which is all volumes, real-time performance, and any data. And so you, as someone who's looking at the data warehouse, either now or in the future, should know that Microsoft has a solution that can handle this, these three pillars: all volume, real-time performance, any data. So let me cover off what this means, so that you guys know. And again, I'm going to do it at a very high level. And what we could do later is, if you're interested, talk to Rob about what are the things that you're interested in hearing more about, and we can do a deeper level dive here in any one of these technologies. So giving you the high level spiel. So the first thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about is around this concept of scale out. So let me kind of make the delineation for you guys, so that it's very clear. Of course, I'm a Microsoft employee, so I'm not gonna criticize anything, but we have different tools for different needs. So your SQL Server software deployment was built on an SMP. I mentioned this previously, on an SMP symmetric multiprocessing engine, and it processes things sequentially. So what's the difference between SQL Server and Parallel Data Warehouse, as an example? Parallel Data Warehouse was architected as an MPP. And what is the difference between an MPP and an SMP? An MPP, the acronym for an MPP is, it's a massively parallel processing architecture. And so what does that mean? It means that it uses a shared nothing architecture. So you can envision this appliance having multiple physical nodes, and each of those nodes is running an instance of SQL Server that's running on its own dedicated CPU, memory, and storage. So that's the difference. If you were to deploy SQL Server on a standard hardware server, it's a shared architecture, right? It's sharing the CPU memory storage. And for this MPP, it's multiple physical nodes, each running its own SQL server with its own dedicated CPU memory storage. And when you issue a query through an MPP system, it will break up that query, and it will run that query simultaneously over all those multiple nodes, right? And so what that allows you to do, what that allows this multiple nodes is it can scale out linearly. Whenever you need more scale, you don't have to buy a brand new hardware rack server, right, from HP or Dell or one of our many 15 to 20 hardware partners. You don't need to do that. You just add another node, another blade or another rack, I should say, or blade into the rack, right? And so what that allows you to do, once you add another node, it will incrementally scale across that node. And so what that allows you to do at the very end, the final benefit is that there's pretty much no limit to the amount of data that you can scale out to. And so, right now, I mean, that's a theoretical concept. But what we tested here at Microsoft is, up to 6 petabytes of relational data, right? And that is an astronomical number compared to, a lot of the stuff that we probably do on a normal day-to-day basis. But it's petabyte scale. Multi-petabyte scale is what we're able to accomplish with something like PDW. And if you haven't looked at PDW recently, I would encourage you to do that. You could even order a POC thing from your salesperson or whatever. But I'm not here to give a sales pitch, right? I'm just trying to inform you that as your SQL Server deployment grows, and when you're ready to, this will be a good option. We're working really hard to get the parity on the kind of the SQL commands between the two offerings. And so it will make the shift as easy as possible from you to go to SQL Server to PDW. In fact, we have best practices, white papers, and even some tooling that will help migrate the solution if and when you're ready. Of course, this is not for everyone. I'm not saying it's for everyone. If you already have a solution that you really like, then by all means, we're just here to kind of inform you of the different options that you have. So here's the other option, which is scaling out non-relational data. So I just mentioned the solution that we talked about previously is about scaling out relational data. So how can you scale out non-relational data? And I'll talk about non-relational data a little bit more in a subsequent slide. But non-relational data for us sits on 2 places. The first one sits in Azure, and we call it HDinsight. And let me just say, I'll cover more about HDinsight in the future slides, so I won't talk too much about it. But just picture this: the cloud was built for scale out, right? And the cloud in general, especially if you're a PaaS, which is a platform as a service, and not necessarily like an IaaS thing, but a PaaS, which is platform as a service, means that the vendor, like Microsoft, has re-architected the whole thing so that it's cloud enabled. So what that means is anytime that you need to add more compute resources, it will linearly scale out with those new resources. Anytime you don't want those resources, you can shut it down, right? Something like that. And so the cloud, Microsoft has built the cloud to be linearly scale out. And so we have a non-relational offering in the cloud, I'll talk about later, that will scale out linearly non-relational data. The other thing to know is, and this will be announced much more deeply in the April 15th announcement that Microsoft has an event in San Francisco, by the way, is the next version of PDW. And the next version of PDW will also have a Hadoop region in it. So now PDW will also have the ability to scale out non-relational data on-premise. So the key understanding here is that Microsoft can scale out both your relational data as well as your non-relational data, both on-premise and in the cloud. And so that's the key idea here. And so to kind of reiterate this point, let me talk about a customer example that we have. So Virginia Tech, I don't know if everyone here knows Virginia Tech. They're one of the foremost research institutions here in the United States. And Virginia Tech is looking at doing, well, in one of their branches, they're looking at doing research, right, specifically around DNA. And so the researchers around the world who have these special technologies, DNA sequencers, I won't pretend to tell you guys that I'm an expert at the DNA business, but from what I understand, DNA sequencers, they're sequencing first of all DNA, right, and they're generating petabytes and petabytes of data every single year. And so, and this is a worldwide thing, right, across all the academic institutions that are doing DNA sequencing. And so, once they generate it, it's probably about 15 petabytes of data every single year. And so, what an academic organization like Virginia Tech would normally have to do to capture that amount of data would be that they would have to go and build a supercomputer infrastructure, right, with multiple hardware servers to be able to encapsulate, not only store all of that data that's growing every single year, but as well as to do some heavy-duty computation on that data, right, because they were trying to crunch the numbers so that they could find some anomalies or find some trends in the data that will help them in their research. And so Virginia Tech took a different route. And what they did was, instead of building a supercomputer infrastructure that would have costed them tens of millions of dollars in grant money, they instead came to Microsoft and essentially, see, I'm defaulting to my old vocabulary, which was to say install, but it's not install. It's actually is an HDinsight in Azure. So all they have to do is turn on the service and move the data into Azure. And what they were able to do with this is now be able to encapsulate all of that data and crunch those data in Azure and be able to hopefully accelerate their discovery so that they might find treatments for cancer. So they're doing cancer research with this DNA data. And so that's just a really great story around this ability to leverage the power of the cloud and to leverage the power of Hadoop, which I'll talk about more. So I unfortunately don't have demos here for you, so I forgot to take those slides out. But let's keep going to the second pillar of the modern data warehouse, which is real-time performance. Okay, so for you guys, I know that this is the past organization, and some of you guys, or if not the majority of you guys, are probably on the bleeding edge of SQL Server, at the very least, probably one or two versions back. But let me just say, for those who haven't tried SQL Server 2012 as it relates to data warehousing, this is definitely a feature to look forward to. It was introduced first in SQL Server 2012, and in SQL Server 2014, we've made some key enhancements. So first of all, I'll talk about the 2012 stuff, which is this is our in-memory column store. Previously, Microsoft branded it X Velocity for those who have been around that length of time. The X Velocity column store index is what we called it. We're just calling it in-memory column store now. What is this technology? This essentially takes a traditional row store that you use, for your data warehousing, and you reorient it to be a columnar format. And when you do so, it just really depends on how your data warehouse was designed previously, and there's a lot of factors. So I won't say that it's going to be the same performance gains for every single customer. It's going to be different. But what we've seen is some customers, just by simply changing from row store to column store, leveraging the technologies that allow you to take advantage of the new hardware realities that have more memory. Essentially, Microsoft, we looked at our query engine for data warehousing, and we basically architected for the new hardware realities. So the old data warehouse technologies would take advantage of the fact that most servers have a lot of storage and not a lot of memory, right? But the new hardware realities is that there's much more memory, and so the query engines have to be re-architected to take advantage of that reality, and not every vendor has done that. But Microsoft did in 2012 for SQL Server, and now we have the column store index. And some of our customers have reached upwards of 10x, all the way up to 100x, and we've seen some customers reach 600x performance gains. It really all depends. Your performance will vary, so I won't make any claims here. But the other benefit that the customers also see is compression. So they see their data just because they from row store to column store, they be able to compress their data. So here's another thing in 2014 that will even greatly impact this even more. So in 2014, SQL Server 2014, we have updated the column store to be both updatable and clustered. And so what does that mean? Updatable and clustered. If you guys have tried in 2012, you're using the 2012, you know that that essentially we're creating a copy of the row store, right? It's a read-only thing for the columnar format. And so in 2014, it's no longer a read-only. The columnar can actually write back. And so what that means is several things. If you wanted to, and you don't necessarily need to if you don't want to, but if you wanted to, you can say, hey, I don't want that row store anymore. I just want everything in columnar format because I'm running a data warehouse. So I only want columnar. I don't want to copy, I don't want to copy the row store to the columnar. I just want columnar. You can do that now because it's updatable again and it's clustered, right? And so there's only one copy of your data. And if you were to do that, then your compression story gets even better because you're saving on the data stored. Because essentially the columnar format can essentially compress your data, maybe 5x, 4x, whatever the case is. It's going to be multiple times more, depending on, again, this is depending on how your data warehouse is today. It can go multiple times more compression, and then you could just have it in columnar, and so you'll save in storage costs. And so you don't have to, you don't have to have another more storage, right? You can save on the storage of your hardware servers, which is a great thing, right? Saving on storage. The other thing I will mention, just as a point for those who haven't tried it in 2012 yet, is that this columnar format, it's in memory in quotations. It's actually memory optimized, which is a Microsoft. What we did is our engineering teams really thought about how we could deploy in-memory technology in a very smart way, which is you don't have to necessarily buy a brand new spanking hardware server with lots of memory. I mean, if you did, it would perform better. But if you didn't and you want to leverage your existing hardware, no problems. You can just deploy this, and what it will do is it will figure out how much memory you have, and you don't have to have all of your data in memory, right? And that's kind of the limitations of other vendors out there that have in-memory technologies, that they require all of your data to be in memory. So that means you have to plan ahead to buy a whole bunch of memory where all your data will fit, right? And in our in-memory column store, it actually intelligently figures out, okay, you have so much memory, so we're only going to stick the hot data into memory. And when it's not needed, we'll kind of rotate that back out and then stick the hot data back in there. So it's a very intelligent in-memory column store. And so the net for you guys, if you haven't tried it in 2012, definitely try it. And in 2014, it only gets better. And you can try it with your existing hardware. So you don't have to necessarily buy a new hardware thing. Okay. This next slide is around concurrency, around mixed workloads. And so, first of all, I'll let you guys know, this is a PDW feature. So if you guys are interested, again, in PDW, as I mentioned before, PDW is an MPP technology. It parallelizes that query. So if you look at that diagram right there, it shows you that as you send a query, it will parallelize it across multiple nodes, and each of those nodes will run, and then it will reassemble the query, and it will return back the results. Right? That's kind of the basics of an MPP infrastructure. And so what it'll allow you to do is because it's parallelizing over multiple nodes, just think of this, if you want to think a basic understanding of this, think of this as like, an operating system that has multi-threads, right? So if you have an operating system with multi-threads, it can run a whole bunch of stuff at the same time, right? The basics of an operating system. And so think about that in a similar way with MPP for querying. If you have an MPP infrastructure, it can split the query, it can run, and it could do multiple things at the same time, right? So multiple mixed workloads at the same time, like you could do data loading and querying at the same time, and it'll just run faster, and it'll run it simultaneously. So that's an MPP feature. The final feature I want to mention to you guys, just a heads up, is Stream Insight, right? And of course, you guys have been in SQL Server or SQL Server customer for a long time. You already know this. So I won't belabor the point that we do have streaming to do complex event processing. So that's all I'll kind of say about that. I'll mention a customer example, and then I'll go into the next section around Hadoop. Okay, so this last customer example is from MEC, and MEC is a division of WPP, which is a large, think of them as a multi-billion-dollar organization that does advertising. So if you can picture the advertising space, they have to, they're creating ads for their customers, and they're landing those ads anywhere on TV or in print media or online. And their customers want to know the efficacy of their advertisement, right? Like, let's say that they spent $1 million to run an ad for the Super Bowl. They want to know how many people, actually, thought that that ad went well. How many impressions they had. What was the, the call to action to do something. How many people actually went and did something. They wanted to know all that kind of stuff. And so what happened was their previous solution, they had queries that would run anywhere up to 4 hours to finish that query, and that was just much too long. And so what they did was they did a combination of two things, which is one, they purchased PDW, and the other thing that they did was they started to implement the in-memory columnstore, which I mentioned, and the two combined allowed them to go from 4 hours down to minutes. So minutes in their query response time. So this is something that it was just really impactful for the business to go from hours to minutes. It's a multiple times performance gains that they were able to accomplish with PDW and the in-memory columnstore that's part of PDW, as well as the in-memory columnstore is also part of SQL Server, FYI, as if I didn't mention that before. Okay. So the last section that we'll talk about today is around any data. And this is really around the technology of big data, right, or Hadoop. And so unfortunately, I can only give you guys a high-level thing today. And again, as I mentioned to you guys earlier in the call, if you guys are interested in Microsoft's story around Hadoop, I'm happy to arrange and organize a much deeper level thing. Today will just be a 50-level thing. And so the first thing, I'm just going to do this build because I can see we're running out of time here. So I'm going to go a little more quick, which is, what is the definition of big data? And this seems like a basic thing, but it isn't, because every person, every vendor, everyone is saying big data right now. Like, do you have big data? Are you ready for big data? Do you have a big data offering? Like, you're probably hearing that from pretty much everyone, every conference you go to, everyone's saying big data, big data, big data. But really, what is big data? And as we look at the purest form, the purest kind of definition of what big data is, this is what it is. It's able to, on kind of the y-axis, handle data of all volumes, right, from terabytes to petabytes to potentially exabytes in the future. To, on the x-axis, handle data of different complexity. So different variety, remember I said the different data types that are non-relational in form, as well as different velocity. So data that's coming in much faster. You have to be able to handle, streaming data, so to speak, right? Data that's coming at a super high velocity. And this is, in essence, big data is the intersection of data size as well as variety and velocity, right? And so this is the purest form, the purest definition of what big data is. And really, you don't have big data in the purest form unless you have kind of both the x and y axis. Of course, because every vendor and everyone is talking about big data so much that this purest definition has lost meaning, and it's really, it's really whatever the vendor says it is. But essentially, if you want to think about big data in the purest form, you're talking about the intersection. So the far right and the far upper corner is what big data is. It's big data. It's data of all size, large sizes as well as different data types and different velocity. That's the purest form of the definition of big data. Okay, so what is Hadoop? And I know Hadoop, for some of you guys, maybe it's something that you already know. And for some of you guys, or maybe even a lot of you guys, you're like, well, I've heard of Hadoop, but I don't know what it is. So let me just kind of level set here. And again, we're doing an intro here. So Hadoop is, first of all, it's an open source technology. It was first implemented at Yahoo, amazingly enough. It's the Yahoo and the Googles of the world are the ones who kind of started this Hadoop movement simply because they wanted to have or index the entire internet, right? And if you're thinking, like, think about it with me for a second. You want to index the entire internet, you're going to need a lot of storage. So the traditional databases and data warehouses was just not going to work for them. And so they went out and created this thing called Hadoop. And then afterwards, they made it open source and it created a life of its own, right? And so what is it? Essentially, it's a bunch of open source projects that essentially creates a system that does distributed scalable solution on commodity hardware. But it's very much open source, and which means it's open for everyone and everyone can go download it. But it's also very in its infancy, so to speak. It hasn't crossed the chasm. It's not really easy to use. There's a lot of complexities to it, right? And so from Microsoft's perspective, we want to support the Hadoop ecosystem, but we want to make it much more easier. We want to make it much more accessible. We want to make it so that anyone can leverage the power of Hadoop without having to be necessarily a super duper Hadoop user and know everything and know how to implement it and know the meaning of pig, hive, flume, and mahout. Yeah, I'm sure half of you guys know this, and half of you guys are wondering why there's some weird names on this PowerPoint slide. This is just the culture of Hadoop. They use different interesting names to name their sub-projects, right? So essentially, think of Hadoop as two main things. One is that there's this thing called HDFS, which is their distributed file system, and this allows you to kind of dump data in there, like text files and web logs and things like that. It's a file system. And then they have this programming model that you can think of the equivalent to this at a very high level. This is not accurate, and those Hadoop people will should be. But I would say MapReduce, think of that as your SQL language, right? It's the way that you can program or write queries to the distributed file system. So that's Hadoop in a nutshell. I won't be able to cover too detailed today. This is just a really high level thing. One thing we'll note is that Hadoop is starting to get much more play because it's not only it's a system that's going to be able to handle different problems, different challenges that for instance a regular structured relational data warehouse might not be able to handle as efficiently and effectively. And so we've seen that across different industries, across different challenges, Hadoop is actually an optimal solution. Like for instance, social network analysis. How are you able to handle the Twitter sphere, the tweets that people are going at? If you want to make a correlation to people's tweets and social sentiment with your product sales, for instance, that's a really hard problem to solve with just your regular SQL Server deployment. And so there are some solutions where Hadoop is actually an optimal solution. And so what is Microsoft offering for Hadoop? And so the first thing I wanted to say so that everyone here is clear is that Microsoft is supportive of Hadoop, even though it's an open source thing. So it's really weird probably for you guys to hear that Microsoft is supportive. But we are actually actively contributing to Hadoop right now. And Microsoft works with one of our partners, and they're called Hortonworks. Hortonworks is one of the key contributors to Hadoop, and we're working with them to bring some of our enterprise know-how, our expertise back to the Hadoop ecosystem, to the open source ecosystem. So we're working with Hortonworks to do that. And while we're working with Hortonworks to improve Hadoop, we've also jointly co-developed with them a distribution of Hadoop on Windows, which is the main thing for us because the open source system oftentimes defaults to Linux. We wanted to make sure that there is going to be a Hadoop offering for Windows that's available for Microsoft customers. And so there is one today. If you are interested in downloading and playing around with Hadoop on your own, you just go to Hortonworks website. There's a Hortonworks data platform for Windows, and that's the distribution that we're working with Hortonworks on, and it's now on their website to download, right? And so that's the Hortonworks data platform for Windows. It's 100% Apache-based and a bunch of other stuff. And so you'll see a lot of announcements coming from Microsoft as well as with Hortonworks as we continue our partnership with them to co-develop on this distribution for Windows. So what do we do after that? After we improve Hadoop, make it more enterprise accessible, make it available, we want to plug it in much more deeply into the Microsoft stack. And so one of the first few things is making Hadoop available in Azure. And so in HDinsight, you guys have probably heard this if you've gone to any of the past conferences. HDinsight is one of our first offerings of Hadoop in the cloud. So why this is such an interesting thing is you don't need to be a Hadoop expert to be able to leverage HDinsight. You don't have to know how to deploy Hadoop, all that kind of stuff, because it's already deployed. It's in HDinsight. All you have to do is go to Azure, www.windowsazure.com, and there's a free trial, right? You can, as a free trial, try HDinsight and start to play around with non-relational data, spinning up a cluster in Azure, and it's really easy, really simple. You'll be up and running in 5 to 10 minutes. Not a big deal. You don't have to acquire any hardware. You can play around with it with your heart's content. And once you're done, you just delete your cluster, and you don't get paid. You don't get charged for it anymore. And so that's kind of the beauty of the cloud, is you only pay what you use. And so you can play around with it for a while. And if you're not using it during the few months or whatever, just delete it, and you're not going to get charged for it. And then you want to play around with it, several months later, just spin it up again, and then you start getting charged for it, right? And so that's kind of the beauty of the cloud. You pay as you go, and we also have other kind of payment offerings if you want, but that's just something to explore. The final thing I wanted to mention, I kind of alluded to this in the beginning of the presentation. On April 15th, we will unveil the details of the next version of PDW, and it will have Hadoop distribution inside the appliance. And so you'll, for the very first time, have an appliance that will have both your structured SQL Server scale-out MPP data warehouse solution in the same box as your Hadoop solution. So you could issue a query that does relational, non-relational. Actually, I'll cover that in the next slide, which is around this technology that we're calling PolyBase. So this is a little bit of a busy slide, but I will say how we think about this PolyBase feature. This PolyBase feature allows you to issue a standard SQL query that can straddle both your relational as well as your Hadoop distribution in the same SQL query. So it's really, really cool. You can go, think about SQL. You can go select from, and that from, you could issue it from a table in your relational data warehouse from PDW, or you can, I should say, refer to, external representation of a table in Hadoop. So what that means is select from where, right, where you're selecting stuff from your relational data as well as your Hadoop data in the same query, and PolyBase will abstract the complexities of learning how to do MapReduce or how to query anything in HDFS, which is the Hadoop file system, and return back the results, and the end user will have no idea that this complex transaction has just taken place. In fact, as an IT person, you don't have to move data prior to this analysis, right? Like if you were wanting to leverage Hadoop today and you wanted to query both your SQL Server PDW as well as your Hadoop offering, you would have to prior move your the data from Hadoop into your data warehouse. And so an IT person like yourself would have to do that before your end users can actually do an analysis that join the two together. In this PolyBase feature, you don't have to do that. You can let your Hadoop sit where it is. You can let your relational data warehouse sit where it is, and you show your end user an external representation of both, and they can query both. And the engine will do the joining for you and return back the results. And so that's one of the Tier 1 features as part of PDW that allows you to do that. The interesting thing about PolyBase is not only can it access the Hadoop that's inside PDW. So again, as I mentioned, we'll have a Hadoop region inside PDW coming up in the next version. It can also leverage and span the cloud. So if you had Hadoop in Windows Azure HDinsight, and you had a non-relational data there, PolyBase can issue a query that has that references both your on-premise and the cloud in the same query. It could do that. It could also span across to third-party Hadoop distributions like Hortonworks or Cloudera. So it can reach into third-party Hadoop distributions, no problems as well. And so it's just a really interesting feature that allows you to complement the Hadoop story for Microsoft. Okay, and with that, I'll just end with this final slide. Actually, let me just check the time. Where are we right now?
Oh, we're right at the end. Oliver?
Right at the end. Okay,
yeah.
Great. You know what? I'll just skip this example, and I'll just say Microsoft has a solution, Software Appliance Cloud, for data warehousing and for Hadoop, and we just encourage you guys to learn more about it. As you want to learn more, contact Rob. We can arrange a deeper level thing. With that, I'll open up for questions or whatever Rob wants to do. It's over to you.
Oh, yeah. I just want to thank Oliver for coming and giving the presentation, a great presentation today, and thank everyone for signing on and coming to this, the data architecture chapter and watching the presentation. If you have questions, since we're really out of time, go ahead and email myself, and I will forward this off to Oliver, and we'll get you an answer. And I'm going to work with Oliver, and maybe in July or August time frame, we're going to have another presentation from Oliver or one of his associates. And if you need my email address, just log on to the SQL Pass website and go to the Data Architecture Virtual Chapter, and it's right there. And I just can't thank everyone for attending. And Oliver, thank you for coming today.
Thank you very much, Rob, and thank you everyone for attending.
I'm going to go ahead and shut down the presentation. I hope everyone has a great Friday, and we're going to have another meeting next month, and thank you. Bye.